All right. Good morning and welcome back. As promised, we're joined now by Brad Wells, a longtime Colts guy who I think has pulled a page out of Sharona's book a little bit. And because I was looking at his Twitter profile and it says former Indianapolis Colts fan. So we'll have to find out a little bit about that. But Brad is a great resource on the Indianapolis Colts. And as it turns out, this show is all about the 0-2 teams that are surprisingly 0-2 to start the season. And so let's get him in here, let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about the Colts.
Hi, how
Brad,
you doing?
I'm good.
It's
Introduce
nice to
yourself to
be
everybody.
back here with you.
Yeah, I
And
know it's been too long.
it's been a while. It's been a while. So yeah, you can find me at Brad Wells NFL on Twitter, and that's pretty much where you can only find me now. I'm kind of laying low now with the writing stuff, though occasionally some
I
Colt
miss your
writers come and
writing, by
help
the
me.
way.
Thank you, thank you.
I do. I miss your writing.
Josh Wilson does a great job over at Stampede Blue. He took over from me there over a year ago, and I really like the job the guys at Horseshoe Heroes are doing. They're the
Need to
wonderful
check them
blog that's
out. I
part of
haven't read anything of
yeah.
theirs. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
Evan.
I'll I'll jump on and read Josh's stuff. You're right. He does a very good job.
He's a sweetie pie.
Well, that is what they do seem to want on occasion, anyway.
That's
All
true.
right. So the Colts, the big story, I suppose, is the rift. So let's talk a little bit about that. Is it real and is it spectacular?
It's both. Yes, it is real, and so thank you, Terry Hatcher. I appreciate that reference. It is real. It is spectacular. It took me a second. Um, so yeah, it is real. There's been a lot of people that are reporting about it. You know, so much of what I hear about it is actually from people who are no longer there.
Hmm.
So I hear about it from people who told me what it was like prior and
Right.
what's going on now. You have various sources that have come out and various online Jason Lock and Fora and a bunch of other people have basically said that the rift is real. It has been brewing for a long time, and the reason for it is that Ryan Grigson, and I've talked to other people about this. Ryan Grigson is really sort of it's kind of a power play with Ryan Grigson. He has control over who will start and who won't, and
Which is
that's one of the
wrong. You don't want to
things.
set your organization up like that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in front office that have that power. I mean, that was one of the things that caused the rift between Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke.
Hmm.
That type of thing happened with Bill Polian and Jim Caldwell prior to Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano coming in. Bill Polian had final say over who would start and who wouldn't, from everything that I know. And
That was a
a
little bit
lot of
at issue,
coaches
by
in
the
it.
way, with Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, and now Fisher has come. He's part of the front office to a certain
Hmm.
extent in
Right.
St. Louis, and that's why coaches want that control because
And
for
that's going
whatever reason,
predictably well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's why coaches want that front office. They want to be part of the front office or have that kind of control, like what Chip Kelly recently did
Hmm.
with Philadelphia, because they just don't want to have these meddlesome general managers telling them who to start and who not to start. And the reason why those general managers are doing that is because we're like, well, I drafted this guy, I signed this guy, you're not playing him the way I envision him to play, so I'm going to pull rank. And it's really, 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 really dumb. If general managers want to do that, they should put on a headset and come down to the sidelines and coach. Since they don't do that, since they're up in a press box, they should let the coaches coach.
And that is the narrative, because that's what it
Mm.
is, that Ryan Grigson is looking long term, whereas Chick Pagano wants to win now. Well, Ryan Grigson's long term decision making sucks.
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate. I think that I don't think either one of them are really looking for the long term. They've pretty much gotten the mandate that they need to win now.
Mm-hmm.
And their entire defense is made up of free agent acquisitions, many of them veterans, several of them past their prime. And I don't see how there's any, thought to the future. They're trying to championship now while Andrew Luck is cheap, because in a couple of years, Andrew Luck will become the most expensive player in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting that you say that because um well, we'll get into Andrew Luck's performance here in a minute. Before we get too far off of the Pagano Grigson deal, um, when we've talked about this before, Brad, I don't know how he's gotten his draft classes to me have been his biggest failure. I mean, you can swing and miss in free agency and kind of sort of understand that because you just, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is a risk-taking proposition, but if you're building long term, you better hit on your draft selection. And he's been horrible in his drafts. He lucked into luck,
Yeah.
and other than that, what has he done?
Well, you can't even give him Andrew Luck. That was a decision made by Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay drafted Andrew Luck. I mean, Ryan Grigson could have drafted, he could have said, I want Robert Griffin III, and Jim
Well,
Irsay
there
would have
was
said, that's
talk of
good for
that.
you. We're taking Andrew Luck. Luck was an Irsay decision. Grigson gets a lot of credit for the 2012 draft because he drafted T.Y. Hilton in the third round.
Okay.
Dwayne Allen, Kobe Fleener, though Kobe Fleener really hasn't worked out the way they've wanted him to. But you're right about a lot of his subsequent drafts. I mean, you have to consider Trent Richardson a draft pick. They gave up a first-round pick to get him, and that was a big bust. Bjorn Werner was a first-round pick in 2013.
I never
he's
understood
hardly
that one.
playing.
Never.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was a good selection. I liked it at the time, and in fact, virtually everybody from that 2013 draft class, there's hardly any of them are still on the team, let alone making any meaningful contribution to the team. And his 2014 class, Jack Mewhort he's okay. It's all right. I mean, nothing really spectacular about him, and there really isn't anything spectacular about the subsequent picks. And this first round pick, Phillip Dorsett, he's got a lot of ability. He just looks lost out there.
Yeah.
And with all the holes this roster had, the last thing they needed to do was to pick a wide receiver. And that's what he did. And that's where I think the comparisons to Matt Millen actually are valid.
It was odd considering that they already had drafted Dante Moncrief in the second round, I believe. Third round.
Third round.
Yeah, third round.
I don't think they had faith in Dante. I think that's one of the reasons why they drafted Phillip is that I don't think Grigson had any faith in Dante. I think, which is a mistake. Dante Moncrief is a very good player.
Is Jerron Carter still on the roster?
He is. He's on the practice squad.
Okay.
That's another thing too. They spent a lot of. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a lot of money, but they gave a lot of money to a guy coming from the CFL. They invested in him, and he was very good in training camp, and in preseason he wasn't anything great. But I mean, I felt that he had done enough to at least get the 5th or 6th wide receiver spot on the team, and they cut him, and now he's on the practice squad. So that's fine. I mean, nobody claimed him when they cut him. But, you go out there and you sign Andre Johnson. You've got enough skilled positions to be effective, and yet still their main weakness is their offensive and defensive line and their defense just in general.
There's a narrative going around that I tend to agree with. We talked about that. We started talking about this toward the middle of the season last year, and 2 games into this year's season, I think it still holds true that offensive line play is just weak league-wide. Across the league, offensive line play has not been good. It's down, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I just think that colleges aren't teaching these guys fundamentals. They're just throwing them out there and winning, and you especially see that at skill positions like cornerback, but I think you see that at offensive line too.
You see it at quarterback as well to a certain extent, I think there's some truth to that. Offensive line play has been terrible. Yeah, I think the other part of it is that offensive lines have not really been. They're having trouble adapting to a lot of what defenses are doing. So it's a little bit of an imbalance right now. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that overall, part of it also was the lack of contact in preseason, the lack of contact in the off season, which was, it's important. You don't want to beat these guys up, and you don't want to permanently injure them. So I think all of that contributes, and I think offensive lines begin to solidify at the midpoint of the season, especially late into the season playoffs.
Yeah, I think that their offensive line is a huge concern. But before we get too far afield from wide receiver, I have to ask you about Andre Johnson. He looks bad. Father Time's undefeated. Is Andre Johnson washed up? Is he done so?
Uh, I don't know. I really can't answer it. I have to see more games. He can't separate, which is the same problem that Hakeem Nicks had last year. And it's just you hate seeing great players get old. You really do. It happens to all of us.
Well,
I'll
and
I'll
maybe
be I'll
seeing
be
it with
40.
Peyton.
I'll be 40 in a year.
Yeah.
So I mean,
You
it's
don't
just
look
like
a day
everybody.
over 20.
Hey, thank you, thank you. And we're seeing with, as you're saying, we're seeing it with Peyton Manning. He
Yeah.
obviously his skills have deteriorated. Tom Brady's skills have deteriorated too, though. I think they've done a much better job of hiding that.
Mhm.
All players, lose something as they get older,
Mhm.
and then they have to compensate in other ways. And that's just what we're seeing with Andre Johnson, and it's a shame because he's a truly great wide receiver that really, because he spent all of those years on so many bad teams in Houston, that I don't
Yeah.
think people really appreciate just how great he was.
It's very sad, and I completely agree. And bless his heart, he finally gets to a team with a good quarterback, and it may be too late. We'll see. I'm not
We'll see.
done. I'm not hanging up his cleats just yet. Although I
Mhm.
do think that Frank Gore has a better chance to bounce back maybe than Andre Johnson. He's been a little underwhelming, but I think that Old Man Gore still has some in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, when the offensive line wasn't holding last night, you saw some shake, you saw some good moves, and you saw the guy moves his feet as about as well as any running back in the league, and obviously a very aggressive runner. This is not like somebody who is hesitant when he hits a hole; he just hits it and goes. And exciting player. Frank Gore and Andre Johnson are two players that I think no matter who they are, you root for them no matter what team they're on, because they just seem to be really great football players who just kind of get it. And
Hmm.
so I think a lot of people in Indianapolis were happy that they signed with the Colts. I think the problem is that while they are great players and they can help, they're not the kinds of players that are going to help them right now. This is an old football team that can't rush the passer and that can't protect the quarterback.
Hmm.
And I don't care what running back, what wide receiver you have, if you can't do those two fundamental things, your quarterback can only bail you out so much. And
Hmm.
I think what we're seeing right now with Andrew Luck, not to go too far away from what we were talking about, what we're seeing now with Andrew Luck is that he basically has to do everything. And
Hmm.
when quarterbacks have to do everything, they get aggressive. And when they get aggressive, they generate turnovers, and that's why we're seeing all of these turnovers from Andrew Luck. Pretty much, it's part of it's a holdover from last year too, but very much recently.
Yeah, you mentioned the tight end position, and you and I so agree on the difference between Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener. And I took a
Mhm.
lot of on social media for uh, and was called a hater. Kobe Fleener is what he
A
is,
hater,
and
yeah, a hater,
I,
really, a
I know,
hater.
right? I'm such a hater. But he did have that college connection with Andrew Luck, and so he was going to get a lot of targets. I have always felt like Dwayne Allen was the better tight end of the two. He's dinged up a little bit. What's his status? Can we expect him back this next week?
I don't know. I actually haven't checked that yet. I mean, Dwayne Allen. I think that's the problem with Dwayne Allen. He can't stay healthy,
He can't.
and yeah, I mean, and that's going to be the end of his career. I mean, Dwayne Allen needed to prove this year that he was going to start and play all 16 games. If he missed, it's going to devalue him, and it's going to hurt his ability to stick with the team. And that's really,
Well, part of it though
Fleener
is
had
he's
trouble
doing the
with that.
hard. I mean, it's
I'm
hard
sorry.
work out there
It is.
blocking
It is.
and chipping and trying to keep especially when you've got a putrid offensive line like the Colts.
It is, and I think the unfair comparison is he's going to always be compared to somebody like Jason Witten. And Witten hardly ever misses games. Witten's still playing even though he was drafted in 2003. So I mean, that's tall. That's a really really big you know comparison. But if you're a great tight end and you're doing all that, you got to stay on the field, and he really struggles with that. And I think that's why Fleener sees a bit more action in that sense, because he has been able to stay on the field. And, Fleener, when he was coming out of college, Fleener had a great combine. He had a great pro day at Stanford. People were really thinking that Fleener was going to be like Gronkowski and really be that kind of player. And he's just not. I mean, he's just one of these guys where he's a lot faster with his pass, with his fun. And, kind of does what he does, and that's about it. There really isn't anything special about him.
Yeah. The Colts fortunately play in a very weak AFC South. They face their first AFC South opponent in Nashville this next weekend against the Titans, who had a good game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who then beat the Saints. A not so good game against the Cleveland Browns, of all teams. Although with Johnny Manziel might be legit there. What do you expect from the Colts Titans game this weekend?
That Titans game last week, was that in Cleveland?
Yes.
All right,
It is
so
the
that was their first
home opener this weekend.
Yeah. So it was their first road game. It was the home opener for the other team. You kind of expect that from a young team, and particularly a team that's got a rookie quarterback. Now they're coming back home. With the way that the Colts have been playing, I think that you'd have to favor the Titans because they're going to be at home. I think Mariota's a very good player.
He's the real
very
deal.
Talented. He's a real deal. And I think the Titans are doing a good job in keeping him under control, in the sense that, the first game that he played where he had a perfect quarterback rating is about as great a debut as you're ever going to see from a rookie quarterback. I don't think he threw a pass over 30 yards. So they're not really forcing the ball down
very
the field.
high percentage passes.
They're keeping it contained for him, which is very smart for a player like him. And he's probably, as all rookie quarterbacks are, they're much more comfortable at home than they are on the road. So with him being back home, it's a division game. The Titans haven't beaten the Colts since 2011.
Yeah, I knew it had been several seasons.
So it's 2011, and so it's an important game for the Titans. It's obviously an important game for Mariota. I think that there's a sense of urgency with the Colts because they know if they go to 0-3, their season's over.
Yeah.
You're not. The percentage of teams that go 0-3 that make the playoffs, I think it's in the single.
It's low. It's pretty low for 0-2 teams.
It is, and Colt fans are just insufferable in this regard. Whoa, we were 0-2 last year. We made the playoffs. I'm like, shut up. This is a completely different season. 11% of the teams that go 0-2 make the playoffs. 11%. So already the deck's stacked against you. You go 0-3, your season's over. Your season is over. And I think, part of the reason for it also is that if they go 0-3, it'll be their first division loss since week 2 of the 2012 season, Chuck Pagano's first season, when they lost a very close game to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have been undefeated in the AFC South since then, since September 2012.
Wow.
So if they lose a game against the Titans at home, which I think the Titans are just due.
They should be due. We'll see. The Jaguars aren't looking terribly bad.
No, they're not looking terribly bad. And I thought the Houston Texans were going to take a step this year, and they've looked atrocious.
Their quarterback situation's horrible. As expected,
and they're more talented than the Titans and the Jaguars, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, I think the Jaguars are a more dangerous team because of Mariota. And, Bortles is not good, but he's definitely gotten better since last year. So I think that if you're a Jaguar fan, that should give you some hope. For the Colts and the Titans, this is about as close as a must-win as you can get this early in the season for Indianapolis. They must win this game, or I don't know what's going to happen in Indianapolis. I think if they go 0-3, there's all kinds of speculation that Pagano will not be the head coach next year.
Yeah.
That's in stone. That's written in stone. So if they go 0-3, why keep Pagano around? Why not make a coaching
Blow
change
it
and
all
see if
up
there's
and
somebody else?
start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or, see, okay, fine. You're going to have a new coach next year. Why not have, Pep Hamilton be the head coach and see what he can do?
Yeah.
And if he can do something, maybe get Indianapolis back into playoff contention, okay, maybe this is the guy that we should be looking at for head coach next year. Because if they go 0-3, their season is done.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, prediction time. Give me your way too early prediction for Super Bowl.
I've had all day to think about this. And I think my prediction will be Denver and Green Bay.
Okay.
And the reason for Denver Green Bay, I think Green Bay, as stupid as Green Bay was in the NFC Championship game last year, and Mike McCarthy really was dumb in that game. I think that they obviously, if they don't have another significant injury, because injuries are the equalizer, I think they will get back to the NFC Championship game. I do not think Seattle will be there to face them. I think Seattle's season is over, in my opinion. They have to win this week or they're not making the playoffs. I think with that in mind, I think Green Bay will get back. And I made this comment on Twitter, and I firmly agree with this. I think it's, the Denver Broncos this is the best Denver Bronco team that Manning has had played on, and it's at a time where his skills are diminishing. So the defense, the running game, they're picking him up. And you can kind of see, it's kind of interesting to see him begin to enjoy that. Like, that was about as happy as I've seen Peyton Manning after that win against the week 2 win against Kansas City. Mm-hmm. That was about as happy as I've seen him after a win, other than like maybe a playoff mm-hmm. game or something like that. You can tell that he feels good about this team, and he should feel good about it. And I think you can tell he feels good about this coaching staff. I'm speculating there. So I think with all that, Manning now, the irony, I think, there's part of me that would really enjoy this. The irony is that Manning now is what Tom Brady was in 2003 and 2004. Just
I don't disagree with that.
Part of the team, obviously an elite player, a very good quarterback, but the rest of the team is very good. So defense and all those kinds of things that's what's going to propel them along. And then when he needs to make a play to help them win, just like with the Kansas City game, he will. But he doesn't need to go out there and throw 50 touchdowns in order to do it. And I was kind of interested to see how Peyton was going to deal with that this year. And so far he's dealt with it, I think, quite well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I could see that. I picked the Packers and the Patriots. We'll see. I definitely think if they're going to get it done, it will have to be this season for Peyton because he doesn't have much left in him. So, Brad, thanks once again for joining me. Tell everybody where they can find you out there on social media.
Sure. At Brad Wells NFL. That's where you can find me. It's so much fun to talk to you. Thank you so much.
All right.